I'm Alex.
I'm James.
And I'm Dan.
And this is episode 23 of the RAGAMUFFIN Music Podcast. This is where we get together every month to talk about the latest news, music and trends in the world of alternative music.
On this episode, we will be reviewing brand new comeback singles from Paramore and Blink 182, as well as new albums from Slipknot, Counterparts and more.
And we'll be deciding on our Mount Rushmore of pop-punk albums, i.e. pop-punk albums that have made the genre and defined it.
But first of all, here's the news.
Huge news to start off with. Tom DeLonge is back in Blink 182. We've got a new song. They've confirmed a new album has come in. Tour. Just madness. How are we
Tickets
feeling about it?
selling out like wildfire. It's ridiculous. And for a lot of money, it seems. But we'll talk about the song later on in the podcast. But it's nice to see the original trio back. And I think it's something that's giving fans a lot of nice nostalgia. Ivan Moody has said that he's going to retire from metal after one more Five Finger Death Punch album. He told fans during a recent live show that he made a promise to his kids that after one more album he's going to retire from metal music, not stating whether he'd tour to support that album still. He wants to spend more time with his family, which is very commendable, but it does remain to be seen if he wants to continue with music in another capacity still afterwards.
Yeah, fair play. Can't really argue against that, can you? Good for him.
Family first.
Exactly.
And When We Were Young Fest has already announced the 2023 lineup before the 22 event has even taken place. The first iteration of When We Were Young has only just occurred, and already before that's happened, we found out that Blink 182 and Green Day will be topping the bill for next year, along with 30 Seconds to Mars, Sum 41, Good Charlotte, All Time Low, and many, many more. Although only one date has been announced so far, it sold out in roughly 2 hours, so based on the 3 dates that occurred this year, we can expect there to be a few more announced for next year as well.
Ridiculous, isn't it? I think when the 2022 announcement came, we were all like, how the hell are they going to top that? I think they have, especially as far as headliners go.
Yeah.
Which means, how are they going to top 2023? Can't be done.
Yeah, they've got to just have the same 2 lineups on rotation every
pretty
year.
much.
And that is a bold move before any of it to have taken place to announce a whole lineup for the following year. Like, I know they were kind of tied to it with the Blink announcement happening and it kind of caught on with that wave of everyone getting excited. But yeah, that is strong to announce a whole big lineup ready. But yeah, let's see how... Maybe we'll have a breakdown of the 2022 festival once it's all done, look at some footage and see how it all goes.
Should we talk about some of our previous recommendations then?
Let's.
James, what did you recommend last time?
I recommended Toxicity by System of a Down.
I've never really given this album the full, front to back treatment before, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's kind of really fun and humorous while also actually delivering some really important messages. I really like it when they break away from the melody and the flow of the song to just chuck in a fact about a social issue. I think it's just a really funny way to kind of get the message across. And I've always kind of found them a bit of a laugh and a jokey band, but I can definitely take them a bit more seriously now. Yeah,
I think for me it sort of reminded me that I think that they actually are download headline worthy. Because I think you sometimes forget how many big tunes they've got. Obviously,
I mean, Toxicity and Chop Suey on the same album is nuts,
and Aerials as well. But I think also there's songs like Bounce and Atwa which are just really fun, catchy, and I think just the chaos and the weirdness of it is just makes it such an interesting listen. So yeah, this was fun,
and that was kind of the main reason I picked it. It's not a big album for me personally, but it is a reminder that there is more than just the hit songs from System. They have got that headline potential worthy, whether it does happen or not. And there are deeper cuts than other just your big tunes. There is much more to it. Although it is a long album, it is just quite a fun listen, I think.
What did you recommend, Dan?
I'm really excited about Kids in Glass Houses reforming for a Slam Dunk Festival, playing Smart Casual in full. So I recommended Smart Casual by Kids in Glass Houses.
Loved it.
Hey.
It was a bop. I really, really liked it, start to finish. Sort of flew by, actually. It was one of those albums that was just for me, every song was just really fun. I like with albums like this, you can sort of hear that this is the influence that other bands have taken, which is just weird to sort of work back. It was the same thing when you recommended One Diaz. It was oh, this is where everyone's getting their influence from now. I think Lovely Bones and Pillow Talk were my favourites. But yeah, I think this is one I'm probably going to get addicted to it in time for Slam Dunk next year and probably be at that set. So I really, really like this.
I was a bit mixed. I found it a very easy listening album, and some of the instrumentals, like the guitar tones, were really quite nice. But apart from that, it didn't do a great deal to really pull me in. You had those two, but I had Good Boys Gone Rad and Church Tongues as the ones that stood out to me most. But a lot of it just kind of seemed to mix into one and kind of flow together as an album for me. So there wasn't a great deal that wasn't able to stand out.
I thought you'd pick out Fisticuffs.
No, that to me that was one of the ones that didn't stand out.
Oh wow!
I kind of went through it, and there were certain moments I'd hear, like, it was the guitar tones that stood out very strong to me, and it was very enjoyable to hear some of that and the melodies that would come through with it. But no, those two are the ones that I always kind of make a telltale sign that if I hear a song, I'm going to let an album play through from recommendation first of all, and that I'm not going to look at the song names at all. And then when one jumps out, I then look at it to kind of like pinpoint it. And it wasn't until I got to that Good Boys Gone Rad that I was like, okay, bit later towards the back half of the album, if I remember correctly, that I was like, okay, this one jumps out a little bit more to me.
Wonderful. Slam Dunk's going to be a party.
Yes.
Alex, what did you recommend?
I recommended Somewhere Nowhere by 100th. Don't know how this one's going to land.
How'd you think it was going to land?
Not well with you.
Accurate. It was good to have as background music, but this wasn't really like my kind of jam. Again, this blended a lot even more to me and just kind of flowed all the way through. And yeah, just kind of happened.
I have to admit, I've been really lazy this month and left a lot of my reviews to the last minute, and this was the very last thing I listened to today while I was at work. But I think I might have benefited this album, actually, because I think it's the perfect setting for it. I think it's perfect to just stick on in the background, chill out to, crack on with something else that you need to get on with, and it's a perfect soundtrack, I think. And I'm pretty sure I've listened to 100th years and years ago, but this is a completely different band now to what I remember hearing before.
Yeah, I remember they were like a hardcore band, like a melodic hardcore band.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
how
they
I
just
remember them, I
fully
think.
switched genres, like no notice. They just dropped a new single, and it was like, this is what we are now.
So there was no progression at all. It was
there was no indication, no progression. It was literally.
That must
just
have pissed a lot of people off.
It was big at the time, yeah. I mean, people were livid. But
Because I remember you back in the day always recommending them to me and say, I'll listen to them at some point. So I imagine if I was to go back and listen to it from that older music catalogue, I'd probably get a different kind of vibe.
I'll tell you what, I had a different recommendation in mind, but I'll recommend Old 100th at the end of this episode so that we can compare. Because I really liked it. I think it conjured up a big argument at the time of like, should they keep using the band name? Because it was like, well, you built an audience by being a hardcore band. That's your identity, and then you completely switched it up and betrayed it. But I think you do what you want.
Being an active band now, I don't know how much you know, when they play shows, is it solely this kind of different change up? They don't visit anything from old catalogue?
Not at all. And the thing is, they said they were literally like, I think at the time, I might be wrong, but I remember at the time the album came out and they were booked for like a hardcore tour, and they said, we're not playing any old stuff. Like, there wasn't like a...
Wow.
I might be wrong. I might be wrong. But because I think a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to hear all the old songs one last time. And they were just like, nope.
Just not happening.
This is it now. And they went out on a hardcore tour playing like this sort of stuff. I think that the album before this had a bit more edge to it. But it was a similar vibe. And I don't know how it went down, but I like it.
Anyway, I really loved this. I like the kind of... There's almost like a 1975 vibe to it.
Yeah.
There's a bit of dance, a bit of like... almost lo-fi stuff in there, turnover kind of vibes as well. Yeah, I really like it as a nice kind of mix of influences kind of coming together. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, nice one, I'm glad. Should we talk about some new music then?
Yes.
Paramore are back, baby. Let's talk about This Is Why.
Or do we kick things off with James, or do we finish things with James?
Let's get it out of the way, I think.
Yeah.
Let's get it out of the way. Fuck. Okay. Positives and negatives. Let's start with positives.
What was the positive?
There's a lot. I really enjoy the mix of the instruments, in particular the drums. I think it sounds really nice and unique. It's minimalistic, and it made me feel like I'm sat behind the kit and behind the most basic drum setup. The way it's been produced, the bass drum, the snare drum, the hi-hat tones that are there with it have a very distinct sound that stands it apart, I think, from a lot of music. And it makes, just like those drums and the hi-hats as the cymbals, sound very much to me like individual instruments. It doesn't sound like, oh, this is a drum performance. it feels like you've got your guitar, you've got your bass, you've got your bass drum, you've got your snare. The way it's all there in the balance.
Yeah. He's all over the kit. Yeah.
It's unique, and I can't really pinpoint or compare that to anything. And the same with guitar tone. I really loved that, and it sounded nice. However, then the song as a whole just didn't appeal to me. As soon as it kind of came together, aside from the instrumentals, tying it all together, I felt like I expected more in a way, and it just didn't turn out to be something that resonated with me in terms of it being like a big comeback song as a whole.
I think you used the word expecting, or the phrase expecting more, and I think that's where this song kind of suffers a little bit. After all the kind of interviews and stuff where they've been teasing their return, it kind of implied, or maybe we incorrectly assumed that it meant there was going to be a return to kind of emo Paramore, or there'd be at least a bit of a punch to it, which is why this song's a bit frustrating to me, because it's carried by some really, really fun drumming, some pretty cool, funky, almost like 1975 style guitar, and like the world's most infuriatingly catchy chorus. But the rest of it just feels so Radio 1.
Yep.
And I mean that in the sense of like, I feel like a lot of Radio 1 listeners are just like, they'll just stick on the radio and like, oh, this has got a nice beat to it. Greg James is quite nice. I find him really attractive. And then, yeah, they don't really think too much more about the music. They'll just feel the beat, which is fine. It's not a bad song, but it leaves a lot to be desired, I think.
See, I loved it. Like, don't get me wrong, I think I had the initial response that a lot of people had of like, I was a bit standoffish to the song, but it grew on me massively. I think taking the step, because I think we were all, yeah, like you said, we all sort of assumed what it was going to be.
Which is our own fault, by the way. We shouldn't have assumed.
But actually, I think, like, given the like pop punk revival that's happened over the last few years with like the Travis Barker project and all his little minions doing his bidding, I don't know. I just think like it would have been a really safe option for them to just churn out like a pop punk or like an emo thing. I think like it's reflected in the lyrics, like the lines like, you're either with us or you can keep it to yourself, and like if you have an opinion maybe you should shove it. I think it's almost them just like a sort of a healthy like disrespect of like, well, if you want like something else, get it somewhere else, because we're not going to do that. Which I like. And I think just like musically, like we said about the drumming, but I think like all the layers that are in the song are really interesting to listen to.
You make a very important point there, which I think is going to be the theme of this podcast. And let's just kick this off already here. If you're not happy with the music someone's putting out, there is always other music by them you can go back and listen to.
Or other bands.
Other bands. But there's always the older stuff there. Yeah. There's alternative. So just keep that, because I think that is going to be a running theme throughout today.
But yeah, I mean, I liked it. They said in an interview that they've their recent influences have been Foals and Block Party. I've said it 100 times, Block Party are fucking sick. So any band that's...
You can hear the Block Party in this.
And they're taking Block Party on tour with them around the UK.
Yes. Huge dub. I can't wait. I might go. But yeah, I just really liked it. I think it was just a really, really interesting way to take things. And like Dan said, huge chorus. Like, addictive chorus.
Bury Tomorrow are back with a new track, Abandon Us. They've announced that their 7th album will be coming out in March next year. What do you guys think of this song?
I think Alex and I have both mentioned in the past that we've struggled previously to get into Bury Tomorrow because there's just something about the voice, like the growls and like the screams that just is almost like grating. And I think we got over that on their last album, Cannibal. But I feel like it's back on this song. I just couldn't enjoy this for some reason.
See, that's so weird, because I had the complete opposite.
Oh, really?
Of like you said, it took us a long time to get used to Danny's vocals, but this was one where I was like, every line he delivers is like crack, like especially that when he does how could they do that
that bit is nice.
Is like
from like a melody perspective,
proper just grimy, gnarly vocals, which I really liked. I like this song, and I think that's the thing with this band. A lot of it sort of comes down to a coin flip on how you feel about his vocals, because like riff's great. Clean chorus, great. Breakdown's good. It's just like...
Yeah. The rest of the song is like a textbook great metalcore song.
Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree, because for such a long time, that was the jarring point for me, that I didn't enjoy it. And I think, like you say, with Cannibal was that turning point that got me into a fan kind of right before Download happened this year, really, and then seeing them at Download was great. I'm a big fan of this. Big riffs from the start. I think, like you say, that line of "How could they do that to us" is so strong and powerful. And I think the nice transition to the chorus was good, with Tom's vocals then coming in and offering that kind of reprieve from that force of the screams. The bridge has some lovely instrumentals that complement the vocal delivery, some lovely breakdowns, and I'm very hyped for the new album in March now, for me.
I think also as well, like, sometimes my like default reaction to a band like Bury Tomorrow is like, this is generic metalcore, and I have to sort of remind myself that actually no, they were like one of the founding bands of that genre.
Yeah.
You get a lot of people saying about, in terms of the UK metalcore scene, the pioneers being Architects, some of Bring Me, Sleeps, and then kind of Bury Tomorrow come just underneath that from a lot of people's perspective. And I think because you have those other three, and you look at the way Sleeps are heading on their trajectory with Alexandra Palace next year, that they are kind of starting to push over the edge and break through, that Bury Tomorrow are like slightly underneath that.
It's just, I've been thinking of for ages, like, who's going to be the support on this While She Sleeps show at Ali Pally? It's got to be someone fairly big.
It clocked to me
It's
yesterday.
just clicked that it could be Bury Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I would like that, I think.
And to put it into context, we went and saw Straight from the Path yesterday, and me and Callum listened to some Bury Tomorrow in the car on the way back, and it clicked for me. And you were in a separate car, and I was thinking, I've been wondering who it could be. And with the UK metal
We've been
scene,
saying, haven't we? Like, it's going to have to be someone like fairly big, but not big enough to take the limelight away from Sleeps.
Exactly.
I think Bury Tomorrow could fit that.
I think
Also,
they'd be a strong
like,
contender.
I feel like Sleeps, like, with their sort of their ethics, like they want to bring the scene up with them. So
Yep.
I think I can picture a bill of like Sleeps, Bury Tomorrow, and then maybe a band like Loathe to open.
Fucking,
Sort
that
of
would
like
be a cardio
bringing
workout.
as many bands like up with them that are in the scene. I think that'd be great.
Next up, Blink-182 are back. Tom's back. The song's called Edging. What do we think?
To see the three of them, bearing in mind everything that's happened in the history with the plane crash, with Mark's cancer, it's nice to have them together, doing a music video, releasing an album, getting through all the shit they've been through, and to bring it out. So in terms of a song, I don't like it that much. It doesn't appeal. I don't really care too much about it. But in terms of what it means in the grand scheme of things, it's a nice thing to be able to see.
I think it's very disappointing that Travis Barker is taking part in yet another mediocre pop punk project. I agree with James, really. Like, the song itself doesn't really do anything for me. I feel like it's a bit boring. It's just there. It does its thing, which, again, isn't much. But I think if I was a big Blink-182 fan, then like the significance of this would elevate it a bit more and make it a bit more exciting. But I've just never been that big of a fan of theirs, so it just doesn't spark anything for me, unfortunately.
So I'm not like a crazy big Blink fan, but I think not the novelty, but the excitement of Tom being back, sort of actually that worked for me. It sort of like carried over into the excitement of the song. So for me, it was just like we said, like when you think about all the things they've been through as a band and as like friends that have known each other for so many years, it's just nice to sort of hear them like sounding like they're just enjoying playing music together and writing a song that I think it would be a really fun song to hear live. I think the chorus is like got enough to it that a crowd's going to enjoy it, and it's just nice. And that sometimes that's fine.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think another thing to like mention is the fact that Tom DeLonge tweeted that the new Blink album has some of the most progressive and elevated music they've ever written, and Edging is just a fun way to remind you that they're fun. Like,
That's good.
I think the whole point of that song was just to like, hey, we're back. Let's have a bit of fun, and that I think it achieved that. So I'm happy. Let's move on to some albums. And first up, Counterparts with A Eulogy for Those Still Here. What do we think?
I didn't know metalcore could be so emotional. The album's packed with great riffs and some solid drum work, but I think the real key to it and the standout is Brendan's vocals. There's so much emotion in the screams, the lyrics, the delivery. Every word really sounds like it's coming from the heart. And especially after what's happened recently with Kuma passing, something like Whispers of Your Death, it hits even more now, I think. Structure of the album, I think, flows well throughout. And after the incredibly energetic and in-your-face trio of Whispers, Bound to the Burden and Wavering Vow, they've done the structure well with having a song like A Eulogy for Those Still Here, giving a different sound with the clean vocals in, a slower tempo, much more dynamic range with the bridge section to like allow for the album to be digested in an easier way. It's just a nice flow through the whole album for me. Some nice fun drum nuances with blast beat sections and stuff like Sworn to Silence. And I think this has now put me fully on board on the Counterparts train after seeing them at Outbreak and really kind of getting into them then. And now having this album come out, it's come out at a great time for me in particular. And I would love to see them live now again.
I feel like this album has like all the right elements for a Counterparts album. It's heavy, it's self-deprecating, it's melodic, but it's not in like a chuck all the ingredients in a blender and see what happens kind of way. All the ingredients have been carefully and lovingly crafted together, almost like an expert chocolatier. It does all the things it needs to do in the right moderation, at the right times, and it creates something really sweet, beautiful, but also dark enough to leave a bitter taste.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you. Obviously, it's amazing for me as like quite an old school fan to see Alex and Jesse both back in the band full time, and they're riffing all over this album. It's so good. But like the crowning feature of this band is Brendan's ability to just write so openly about what he's going through, and it's resulted in a really powerful album. I think not only is it like brave of him to be able to put like his emotions on display for everyone to hear, but like it's written so well. Like there are times where the lyrics are quite eloquent and like poetic, and that then means that the moments that where the lyrics are a bit more upfront and brutal sort of pack an even bigger punch. So it's just an amazing album. And like I think the sort of the run through theme of like grief and like mourning for something or someone that's not actually gone yet, I think a lot of fans are going to be able to sort of resonate with that. And for something that's so heavy, it's going to be quite a comforting album for a lot of people.
You mentioned as well with like the delicacy of some of the lyrics in particular, and one that stood out to me was in Flesh to Feel Your Wounds. Just the opening chorus line of I felt your pulse fall out of sync with mine. The way it was kind of delivered with the clean vocals compared to the screams in that song, there's something about the way he's even thinking about the delivery on certain lines is able to connect through and hit so much more. There's that emotion there, and it's also well thought out with the right kind of intentions behind it, I think. And that's like what you say, where fans are going to resonate with it and be drawn to their music.
Nice. Who wants to introduce it?
I think Dan just did.
Go on then.
Because that hum goes on forever.
That hum went on forever. Oh, it's so good. Let's review the Wonder Years. The hum goes on forever. One of my favourite bands. Love to hear what you guys thought.
I think it's a very strong album that shows off the variety in styles that they're able to write and perform successfully. A lot of the songs feel like a journey and that they flow quite effortlessly in their structure and seem very well thought out in the writing process. He's got very emotive delivery and a certain vocal tone, which I think started to wane a bit in the enjoyment when listening to the album in full, because it became very much the same kind of thing being heard. So from that front half of the album, there was much more enjoyment than in the latter half, because I think that vocal tone, like I say, it was getting a little bit tiring for me. For the most part, instrumentals, I loved and enjoyed it, but it was that vocal performance that pulled me away. And after hearing, I think, was it Wyatt's song we reviewed on the podcast? There was one I remember we did review.
Oldest Daughter.
Yeah, that was the first single, I think, Oldest Daughter.
And I remember hearing that and thinking, I love this. And I feel like in an EP format, I'd probably class it a lot higher. I think due to it being an album length, it just took me out a little bit. To nail down a few, Wyatt's song and Lost It in the Lights were major standouts for me. I love those. And my other main comment is, I wish I could relate to the chorus of Low Tide, but I can't. And if you haven't heard it, I'm growing out my hair because he gives a shit, and I can't do that.
Brutal.
You can take the kind of message from it and apply it to something else.
I was taking the literal message though, like the actual meaning behind those words and pain.
I really, really like this album. I had to listen to it in 2 sittings because it's like every single song like demands like all of his emotion and like energy every single time, and that sort of like tired me out. But I think like that's how good he is as a writer and performer, that he gives everything he's got in every single song. And like some of the choruses are just amazing. And yeah, the low tide and Oldest Daughter especially stuck out for me. And Doors I Painted Shut is one of the like bleakest album openers that I've heard in a long time, but like in a comforting, good way. Like
The thing is, it's a bleak message, but like there's some reassurance in there as well.
Yeah, it was like a...
Because like I Don't Want to Die is like a great, that's a good thing. We should not want to die.
Yeah.
But then there's like the questioning of it, like, or maybe I do at the end, which I guess is like the journey the album goes on of finding reassurance in, because obviously a lot of the songs are about Soupy's kids.
Yeah.
And like finding that they're the light, I guess, and essentially what's keeping him alive. Hence the closing track. You're the reason I don't want the world to end. Which, even as a massive Wonder Years fan, going into this album, the first listen through, aside from the singles, a lot of it kind of took a back seat because of how exceptional I thought two songs on this album were, especially, and that was Cardinals 2 and You're the Reason I Don't Want the World to End. Like the emotion like behind, because they both kind of start kind of calm and then just build up to this massive outpouring of emotion. That I had that, you guys won't realise, but I had that Nightmare Again bit in the bridge of Cardinals 2 is like a directly borrowed from the original Cardinals. So I think that's part of a lot of the fan service on this album. Which has continued. Some of it's a bit more obvious, like the references to Madeline is obviously a reference to the song Madeline. Cardinals 2, as I've just mentioned, is a big standout reference, but there's also more subtle ones in the lyrics, like the mention of paper cranes is like a nod back to their album Sister Cities. And there's all sorts of just fan service chucked in there.
Not done in like a cheap way.
But no, it's not. It's not done as a gimmick. It's kind of almost like a revisit of like I had this feeling with this song at this time, and I still have that feeling. Like I had that Nightmare Again is like I'm still having this problem. This is still a thing. And I felt like that bit at the end where he builds up to the lift it up. It feels like that's him stepping out of the nightmare and shouting at himself, being like, "Just fucking lift it up, get this over with," kind of thing. So yeah, I love Soupy's songwriting and how he just seems to, like, everything has a purpose, I guess. I
was just wondering for you that, Dan, because obviously you're Wonder Years, I guess, your favourite. Would you say they're your favourite band?
I think so, yeah. Whenever I'm asked who my favourite bands are, there's usually like a different top three each time, but the Wonder Years seem to always be there. So I guess they are my favourite band. How does this album sort of rank? You see, they were building up a lot. They were always, that the band themselves were saying, this is our best album, or this is the Wonder Years album, this is the definitive album, this is one that the fans will love. And I always feel like they're almost ahead of their time quite a lot. Like their previous album, Sister Cities, I didn't love straight away, but kind of as the years have gone on, I've kind of understood it a bit more. And as the Wonder Years are also like 10 years older than me, like their album, The Greatest Generation, there's a lyric in one of the songs on that that's Jesus Christ, I'm 26. That album's almost 10 years old now, and I've turned 26 this year, so that album now, I understand the themes on it a bit more now that I'm in that place. So I think 10 years' time, maybe when I'm having kids or when my friends are all starting to have kids and stuff, maybe the themes on this album will kind of relate to me a lot more. So for now, it's kind of just a feeling of understanding what they're going through and take it, like some things, although they're written very specifically about a certain thing, you can just take the themes and apply it to maybe a different relationship you have or something. Like a lot of the themes on here are revolving around children and the future and things. But I think you can take a lot of the themes and apply it to other things. Like with Low Tide, James said he couldn't relate to the growing out my hair lyric, but it's obviously you can take it as a metaphor to mean kind of whatever you want it to mean. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not my favourite Wonder Years album right now, but I think the more it grows and the more time it's got to kind of, or the more time I've got to grow with the album, it could start to rank a bit higher. Which is such like an insane way for like a band to exist. Yeah. It almost like each album mirrors like just a chapter of people's lives as they grow up. Exactly. Like, yeah. Yeah, that's really. I feel like each Wonder Years album, like they've kind of grown up, like they're stressing about being teenagers in college at the start of their career, and then they progress to just stressing about adulthood and how they don't feel like they're adults. And now we fast forward to here where they're stressing about the future and what that holds, I guess. So it's great that every kind of, a chapter's a good word for it. Every one of his album kind of shows a different side of things and a new theme, a new thing to be incredibly depressed about. Yeah.
It's quite a fascinating perception to have of it. It's making me think about all like different bands I listen to and like different times that I've grown up, like see an album a different way compared to how I used to. So got me thinking.
Yeah. It's because normally like an album ties to like a period of your life because that's how old you were when you heard it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'll listen to an album that I loved as a teenager, and that will like bring back those feelings. But it's weird for it to be like the opposite of like in our case we have to like grow into these albums.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Does that make sense?
It's almost like you take it as wisdom and advice.
Yeah.
It's almost like the band are like, this is how we feel right now. You're going to feel like this at some point. Be prepared for it.
That's such an interesting... I think that's going to completely change my like relationship to the Wonder Years, like thinking about it in that way, because I've never thought about it like that before.
It might be good for you guys to go back and like listen to some of their previous work and stuff as well, because then like listening to this album after listening to everything else and being a fan of theirs for years, I understand the references here. If you go back and listen to it after listening to this one first, you'll get the references in reverse,
right? Yeah,
which could be again quite an interesting way to experience it. Plus, I think the only one I recommended to you so far might have been The Greatest Generation.
Yeah.
So Architects have released a brand new album, The Classic Symptoms of a Broken Spirit. I don't think we had high hopes going into this one, but what do we think?
I think based on like all the singles that we got, I think all of us had like a pretty clear idea of what to expect from this album. And I would say, first of all, that the expectations weren't high, but those expectations were met. Like the album is exactly what I thought it was going to be, leaning a lot on the industrial and the electronic elements that they've added, which is fine. I feel like we need to say at the top, like, bands can do whatever they want, and if this is what they want to do, more power to them. But it's just not. It's not what I like about Architects. There are definitely songs on here that I would enjoy. Like I think Deep Fake is great.
When We Were Young.
When We Were Young is, there are definitely songs that if they played them live and added to their set, I'd be happy to hear them live. The thing about this album is like there were times where it felt like they were building towards something heavy. I understand like showing restraint, but sometimes the whole point of building up to something is to have that release. And it felt like there were times where a song held itself back by not going all the way in on something heavy.
I agree with you, but like I'm not saying that every song has to have a breakdown or every song has to be heavy, but it would just be nice if there was a few more sprinklings of that on here. Like there are moments, like Be Very Afraid as a whole is
one of the standouts, I think.
Is not old Architects, but like it's like old heavy Architects with a new twist on it, which I really enjoyed. Doom Scrolling as well, I thought was great. There's a song that I can't remember which one it is that has like a little bleh in it.
Spit the Bone.
Spit the Bone. I thought that was great. And probably like the right balance of kind of the new style with not necessarily the old style involved, but what we know and love about Architects still being there. I think me and Alex were talking about this off air.
Yeah.
Is that a term? Is that the term for a podcast?
Let's say off air.
We were talking about it off air before, and we were saying that the singles on this are probably the right choices. The singles are not just probably the better songs, but they showcase the album probably the best as a whole. But as a whole, I feel like the album kind of is good, but there's just not enough there to kind of really stick out and bite like Architects used to. It's like they've had their teeth filed down a little. Yeah,
I think this is a style that's going to bring in completely new people, and I think for the size of venues that they want to be playing, these songs are going to work.
That's the thing as well. It's important to remember that Architects have grown like far beyond where they were even maybe 2 albums ago on Holy Hell, that was probably the first time where they were starting to play arenas. They're now like just getting bigger and bigger, and they need to write the songs that kind of justify those kind of venues.
Yeah.
Which I think these songs have been written with that in mind, I believe.
There's not much else to add based on what you two have kind of said. The riffs all pretty much had the same tones throughout the album. Instrumentally, I found some of Dan's drum parts quite enjoyable, and there were some different things he was doing. There were some nice tom parts. There were ways he was changing up beats and some nice fills that he put in. That was the main takeaway musically from this album for me. Otherwise, it just kind of occurred and just kind of happened with it. And I just echo what you said as well. And I've seen it in tweets where multiple people have been like, you don't have to enjoy this. The bands and the artists are allowed to write whatever they want to write, and it can fit in your musical taste for it or it can't, but it's not up to you to be choosing what they write. And to the people that have been like atting them or saying really kind of crappy comments, bringing rough things into it and basically saying go back and write this other music, no, fuck off. Because that's not up to you to be doing this. They're entitled to write what they want to write and the music they're feeling at that time. You don't have to enjoy it. You, like Alex has said, if you've got those older songs, they're always there for you to go back and listen to. And appreciate that bands do need to develop. Otherwise, you're going to be getting stale. They're not going to grow. There's quite a cool thing that you can see in that we've seen with some of the bands like we listen to. Look at Sleeps, for example. We've seen them play a 300 capacity venue and are going to go see them at Alexandra Palace headlining next year. Bands have to grow and develop. You don't have to grow and develop with them. You can still hold that old music very dear to you. And whether this resonates with you or not, listen to it, enjoy it for what it is, support those bands in what you like from them, but don't be derogatory in that kind of way because it's not worth it and it's not fair.
Well, also, I think a lot of fans are getting confused between... There's such a clear difference between different and bad. This is by no means a bad album.
No.
Oh, God, no.
It's a different album.
Yeah.
I still on the whole enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
It's good. It's never going to be up there as a favourite Architects album, I think, for any of us. But there are good songs on here.
Also, like, what's the point in writing another Holy Hell or another All Our Gods Have Abandoned Us? Like, if it would be insincere for them to do that. Like, All Our Gods, that was written at a time where Tom was literally dying. He knew he was going to die, and I don't think anyone can really put themselves into that kind of thought process of what kind of art someone could produce in that kind of moment and in that mindset. And then Holy Hell, they're kind of grieving him, I guess. For those that wish to exist, they're trying to learn how to move on. And then we've got this album again, which again is going to be a different kind of mindset. They're never going to write the same songs that they did before because they're not feeling the same things that they did before. So it would be insincere of them to do so. So I guess in conclusion, it's all right not to like something that a band makes. And different doesn't mean not good.
And finally, Slipknot are back with The End So Far, the last release they had with Roadrunner Records. What do you think?
Well, the start of Adderall had me thinking, wow, Slipknot are going to do something really different and innovative here. This opener sounds like it could be in the GTA San Andreas soundtrack. This is really cool. But then, as the album goes on, it feels like they didn't do anything new whatsoever, really. It by no means suggests it's a bad album, though. I really enjoy the atmospheric nature of Yen and Medicine for the Dead. The brutal blast beats on Hive Mind and the sheer intensity of Hell. But I can't help but feel that when you're a band as big as Slipknot, you kind of... When you've been doing it... Well, when you're a band as big as Slipknot and you've been doing this for as long as they have, you've kind of either got to set the bar through innovation or raise the bar by doing the same thing but better, I guess. And it kind of... sadly, I feel like Slipknot kind of stalled a little bit here, and it's quite a forgettable album when you compare it to some of their older stuff, I think.
I think this album, and seeing people's response to this album is like a lesson in like checking expectations, because like I think there are people, and I think maybe sometimes I'm guilty of this, that think we're gonna get like an Iowa 2, and like that they are not in that mindset or
Well, it's like I just said about Architects.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to happen again
Those
because
circumstances
they're
can't
different
be-
people
yeah.
now. They're in a different position than they were.
And I think like when you're as iconic as Slipknot are, I feel like whatever you do is going to have a degree of like being underwhelmed. Do you know what I mean? There are definitely things on this album that I really, really enjoyed. I think Yen is one of their most interesting songs of the post Joey and Paul era.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a perfect display of what they can do in terms of like heaviness and melody melded into one. I think there are songs on this album that are really enjoyable. Warranty I really liked, and Hive Mind I think stands out. But there was just a couple of really odd decisions, like Adderall to open the album. I think was just
Like
a strange move.
it's like I said, it makes you think it's going to be this way, but then they don't really address that style at any other point across the album.
For me, I kept expectations low because although I think some of the singles are the better tracks on the album, like Chapel Town and Rag, as soon as that came on again, I was like, this is familiar and I like this and I enjoy this. And like you say, Yen, I think is one of the best ones on there. There's a lot of the tracks in between that kind of flew past me and just kind of happened, and I was like, oh crap, I'm a bit later on the album now. Like you say with Hive Mind, I love that. Having that build that's like really kind of atmospheric before the chuggy guitars and the blast beats and the big chorus scream. It's wonderful for me. It's aggressive. It's in your face with the cake hits. You kind of get a bit of a feel of that nostalgia, some chaotic energy, and then the chorus kind of feel like there's some organisation and a bit of rest before the chaos ensues again. You mentioned Warranty, Alex, and I think Warranty is a track that is a bit of a reminder that alongside the great instrumentals, some of the strong riffs and drum sections they have, that Corey is actually still one of the best vocals, has some of the best vocals in metal after being present in the scene for so long. I feel there's so much force, anger, intent in the performance, and that he demands attention in particular on that track, almost like standing in defiance that people forget how good vocally he is. And then again, Dan, you mentioned Hell, and that kind of gave me some nice old vibes of Slipknot. That fast-paced vocal delivery took me back to like Spit It Out and Only One off the debut album. Last couple of songs after that didn't really do anything for me, and it's a bit like I said with the Architects album. If I can grab a few songs out of this that I can now put in a Slipknot set list, wonderful. Give me those, because they've built up such a catalogue. They've built up an expectation as well with a live performance of what you're going to get. It's not just about the music, although that's a key factor in it. You're going to see a spectacle, you're going to see a show, and you don't need 10 brand new songs from Slipknot to go into a set list. You need 3 really from them. Give me those few couple of songs that we're going to enjoy, and I think I've got those from this album. So for me, it's done exactly what I've needed from a Slipknot album at this point. I'm not expecting a game changer or anything. My only interesting addition now is that now they're separate from Roadrunner, and in terms of wanting something different and more experimental, now they're without a label, the long-rumoured one of Look Outside Your Window. That was recorded alongside All Hope Is Gone. Whether it was under the label with Roadrunner and they have certain rights to it, I don't know, and that's going to be interesting to see. But because of it being supposedly so experimental, and if they announce it under the Slipknot banner or something else, because I know that was discussed, would be interesting to see if we're wanting something different. I can see them possibly creating their own record label out of this, because they're a big enough band that they could do that. They've got the whole Knotfest almost company now in a way, where they're more than just actual as a festival. You see like the Downbeat part of that as the podcast kind of section as well. There's more of a brand here, and I think in terms of Slipknot for me, I'm not as interested to see musically what happens. There's, I think, a much wider view to see what they could do for the genre.
A big media company essentially now.
Exactly.
It's not Fest.
It's what they can now do for metal to uplift other bands. You look at when they've done the Pulse and the Maggots Fest and put Tala on it, and you had the whole Hate 5-6 video from that was featured. What they can do, I think, for the genre now, they're outside of a mainstream record company, I think is going to be more of this end chapter of Slipknot's career, because that's where it's going to be. So that's
the
more
end
my
so far.
The end so far, and we see what happens on this next part of it.
You raised a good point about the record label thing. Like, could it be that they've not put too much effort into this one to just break out of the contract?
I don't know, maybe. That could
Possibly.
yeah,
And they have been very vocal about this. Way before they even announced like the album and they announced singles, they'd been saying about this being the last one. And one of the key bits I remember seeing was an interview that I think Jim did, where he said he didn't have a lot to do with the writing of this. And ever since there was no more Paul or Joey, Jim has been known to be probably the primary songwriter along with Jay now, writing these songs. And with him taking a step back maybe from this, it might have been more of, let's just get this out. This is all speculation, but it might have been, let's get this out, let's get this over and done with, and then let's push forward with what we want to do finally. And
because I do also feel like there wasn't really that much promotion and marketing put towards it.
It does feel like
much effort.
Let's get it done.
Chapeltown Rag came out ages ago.
Yeah.
It felt like from announcement to release was like Chapeltown Rag was ages ago, but actual album announcement to release was very quick.
At the time Chapeltown Rag came out, it wasn't part of an album. No. It was just a single, wasn't it?
And I remember when they first came back with the Grey Chapter, and the whole big thing about you had to head to their website to watch the music video for the negative one. And they built up so much hype with that coming back that this does seem so quick in the comparison with that kind of thing. But
maybe we're onto something.
Maybe we are. And if the rumours are true and they could be headlining Download next year, if we can get a couple of extra songs out of this, that's gold. So I don't think it's a poor album. I don't think it's Slipknot's worst album. I think it's fairly solid and there are some big tunes on it. But I still think they could do better.
I've got 2 questions for you there now.
Go.
What's their worst album?
All Hope Is Gone.
And if you were to pick 3, you said 3 songs to add to a set list, didn't you? If you were to pick 3 songs off this album to add to the set list, what would you pick?
Personally, Yen, Hive Mind, and Hell.
Thank you.
Interesting.
What would you pick?
Yen and the Dying Song.
Not third song, just 2?
Just 2, yeah.
I think I'd be the same as James.
Also, another sort of issue that I have with this album, you guys might not, but like, as I'm looking at the track listing, 3 of the 12 songs are under 4 minutes long. Like, it's just a hefty album to get through. To make 12 songs last 57 minutes is tough work. But like, I just don't need this many songs going like over 4-5 minutes.
But even if you had that many songs, honestly, I think legacy big bands just doing 5 tracks. It will never happen, but I think ideally when you're at that big stage,
I think
like Bring Me Again, your idea.
Like, the album as a concept is too big for like a band like that to not do. That's the problem.
I think that's a discussion we can do for a later
around
point.
Like I think the fanfare around a Slipknot EP would, compared to a Slipknot album is just. I know what you mean because I'm the same as a fan. I'd rather just have shorter, digestible.
Yeah, I see what Alex is saying as well. Though Slipknot seem like a band that suit an album format.
But I think with the option they're now going to have away from a record label and possibly doing it independent, I think there's going to be a little bit more freedom in what they're able to do in their future. And that's the bit that makes me more excited for Slipknot. Not this album, it's the potential of the aftermath.
The freedom and the creativity that can come with it. It feels like we've moved on now and we're now discussing the album format as a whole, as like a general idea.
Yeah, I feel we could do
so we maybe need to put a plug on that and maybe come back next time and have a full discussion on it.
Usually we end our reviews by talking about upcoming releases, but today, the day of recording, has been a huge release day. We've had Architects with the classic Symptoms of a Broken Spirit, Lorcana with Hugo, Witch Fever with Congregation, Arctic Monkeys with Dakar, and Taylor Swift with Midnights. So they all came out today. Listen to some of them
are great, some of them are not.
Yeah, but
Lorcana's really good. Check it out. I know we're an alternative podcast, but that's a great album.
The upcoming release is coming out next month. It's looking a bit quieter. On the 11th of November, Chelsea Grin are releasing Suffer in Hell. On the 18th of November, Disturbed released Divisive, and Tala released The Generation of Danger. And as well on the 18th, I think an album we'd all thoroughly love to review next month, Get Rollin' by Nickelback.
I'll tell you what, have you heard that Nickelback single?
No.
It's interesting.
We'll leave it there. We may be discussing it.
We'll play it off air.
I mean, I think I could easily say which one we're all most excited for out of that, but...
Should we say it on 3?
3, 2, 1.
Tala!
Yeah, Tala's going to be sick. Can't wait.
Very excited.
We've been to some gigs in the past month, so why not talk about them?
The first one, if we're going chronologically, is me, Alex, and Callum went to go and see Ocean's 8 Alaska at Underworld in London. They had just released the new album,
Disparity,
and it was an incredible show. I managed to meet Chris Turner and got a drumstick. Great times were had. They absolutely killed it. And I think there was such a fun energy in that room. Everyone was having a great time. It was a very, very like sweaty gig.
Yeah, Underworld needs some air conditioning.
They definitely do. But I love that venue. It just kind of affirms to me that that's one of the favourite places I go to for a gig. And that if ever bands go to Underworld that I like, I need to go there. But that they killed it after this being the first time really that since getting into them that I've been able to see them. It was the experience I wanted and so much more. New tracks translated phenomenally live. It was nice to see Jim back on stage with them finally, and them getting a chance to kind of... I feel like a lot of their progress was kind of halted with issues they had with him leaving and then Jake coming in and then him leaving and trying to start this third album. And I think now is the time where Oceans, I think, are going to be able to make a good push because there is a lot of fan base behind them. And I think this is where they can start to dig their feet in, make a sound, get some festivals booked next year and build their name and their brand. I think after that, Dan, you went to go and see Pup.
I went to London, to the Roundhouse, to see Pup, and they were really fun. I prefer kind of seeing them in a smaller setting, like I've seen them at places like the Loft in Southampton before, which is a venue we've talked about in length before, about how you can pack so much energy in such a tiny room. At the Roundhouse, it kind of felt like it was a bit more dispersed, but they still put on a really, really great show. New songs were great. A few oldies chucked in there for good measure as well. And their biggest ever UK headline show. So a nice, momentous occasion for them.
Oh, good for them. I'm happy.
And then finally, literally yesterday at time of recording, we all went to Bristol, went to the Fleece and saw Stray from the Path. And I will personally say this is going to be talked about, I think, for me as one of the best gigs I've ever been to for quite a while. I think they fucking killed it.
You did look like you were having a very good time.
I had an incredible time.
I think you spent more time on people than
on people and on the stage than I did
floor.
on the floor standing around. Yeah, I was chaotic and I was everywhere. And to everyone that caught me at various points, thank you very much. I much appreciated it. I didn't get dropped despite that absolutely solid floor. So very grateful. New songs, incredible live, absolutely phenomenal. Especially like the condition Craig's been in with his broken back and how he's been feeling, and even Drew saying on stage that they nearly talking about cancelling the tour. The fact that he was still able to absolutely nail some of these complex drum parts he's put onto Euthanasia was incredible, and the fact that he's changing from his right foot as his lead foot to his left foot is fantastic. And to carry on with these last 2 dates they've got after this and finish the tour is very commendable. Yeah. Incredible, and they just fucking killed it.
Them as the boys. Yeah, loads of fun. I don't think there was anyone stood still in the crowd. Everyone jumping around, doing a good old mosh. A few spin kicks and bloody two-stepping going on as well. And the supports are great as well.
Yeah.
Guilt Trip and Vatican. Both really, really good. Vatican gave it their all at the start there. It looked like the crowd were kind of warming up to them a bit. It took a bit of time, but the last few songs, they really won everyone over, I think.
Mm-hmm. And Guilt Trip, after we'd seen them at Outbreak, I think we were a bit more familiar, and I think they debuted a new song, or a new song they've put out recently. They sounded fantastic live, and they've got my attention a little bit more at least. And I think, this was an incredible show. All of these gigs that we've mentioned, there are vlogs out on our channel, so go watch them. If you were there, go let us know what songs you preferred out of all of that, and
We also saw an AC/DC an AC/DC tribute act, which was good fun, wasn't it?
Got very drunk.
Yeah. Came away with...
I think the less said about that, the better.
Yeah.
Really.
I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
Well, I wasn't gonna go. That's why I didn't say that I was gonna go, and then because I knew I had Pup the night before. But then when I was at work and I wasn't too tired, I thought, yeah, all right,
Fuck
okay.
it.
I'll be on till 11, and then I can just go home. I'll be in bed by midnight. But yeah, they just carried on, didn't they? God. I think it was like 1:45.
Play into Sandman.
Yeah, there was moments where you were like, I'm ready to go home, and you kept taking my side and being like, dragging on in it, and the next minute you're like, whoa!
Wow, yeah. What can I say? That's how it goes. Should we look at some comments?
Let's.
Here I go, looking at comments again. Right, you guys did a tier list where you ranked every Slipknot song.
We did.
Danyo has commented on it saying, I'd like to see where you now rank The End So Far now that it's out. Could we see an End So Far song tier list at some point?
Absolutely. I think we need a little bit more time to sit with the album first.
Digest it a bit more.
Digest it a bit. But that is absolutely
It's on the cards.
on the cards. So
We have mentioned it already. So yeah, give us a little bit of time.
Fucking subscribe so that you don't miss it. How about that?
Great idea. JBSK111211MSJ.
Great username.
Catchy. They commented on the Lamb of God review, saying, at first listen, I thought it was shit. Then after 5 more times, I have to say it's better than their last 2 albums. Thoughts?
Well, I'll say this because I wasn't in that reaction video, but I heard the song and I thought James was unfairly harsh because I thought it was a decent song. So J_1012.
JBSK111211MSJ.
Well, JBSK11. Oh, fuck, I'm not going. J, I agree. It's all right.
I still stand by my comments. I still think they could do better.
See, I haven't listened to the new album yet, but I've seen a lot of people saying that it's actually a pretty good album.
I find it, from what I've heard of it, I've given it 1 listen. I prefer it to previous album of the self-titled, but it just doesn't have that Lamb of God feel that I'm looking for.
Finally, we're still getting comments on the problem with download video. People are still seeing it. Can't believe it. We've got Chris here. He says, absolutely, I think the Friday headliner should be a different headliner every year. The Saturday, a newish band, and then one of the big bands on the Sunday to close. I think that's a pretty good formula.
Yeah, spot on. Sunday, you got to send them home happy. Well, you got to send the old people home happy. No, yeah, I think literally something as straightforward as that fixes so many of downloads problems.
Yeah, you've kept every group happy there, really.
Yeah.
Gives you a chance to get that young blood in, get the new bands up.
Don't
not
book
Youngblood.
But no, I think that is a very good way to move forward with download. And we're still waiting on that announcement, so let's see what happens. It will be 4 bands next year. I'm sure when we know, you'll know.
And Andy Copping, if you book Metallica for 2 nights, I will personally make your life hell.
How?
Don't know yet. I haven't figured it out, but I will.
It's going to hire Youngblood to follow him around.
Well, thanks for the comments. Keep leaving them. You keep leaving
Keep
them.
them coming, yeah.
We'll keep responding.
If you keep writing comments, you might end up in this podcast.
Blink-182 are back. When We Were Young 2022 is around the corner, and the lineup for the 2023 fest is stacked as fuck. So what a better time than now to discuss the most iconic pop-punk albums of all time. So today we're going to try and figure out a Mount Rushmore of pop-punk albums. Has anyone got sort of an idea they want to throw out straight away? I've got an immediate one I want to throw out.
Do it. If it's immediate,
And
get it out there.
It's Dookie by Green Day.
Yeah.
One thought I can agree. I had that in mind already. It's just so iconic. It was an inspiration, I think, for so many more bands in the genre that are gonna follow through and kind of be the more modern day or 2010s pop punk. I think it's an incredible album. There are some amazing pop punk gems on there. I mean, just obviously just going with Bar's case, Longview, When I Come Around, incredible tunes. Welcome to Paradise, an incredible album that I think very much shaped pop punk as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like sort of the first one, I think, for a lot of people when you think of not only as in the first one that comes to mind, but chronologically, the first album I think you can
This
really
is where it began.
signal as pop punk. So for me, I think that one's pretty much a lock-in for a spot on there.
I think I've got one that could also be a lock-in. It's Enema of the State, Blink-182.
Yep.
I mean, you just got to look at the track listing. Dumpweed, What's My Age Again, Adam's Song, All the Small Things, Anthem. So much iconic stuff.
Am I right in thinking this is the first one where it was the main trio as well? Where it was Tom, Mark and Travis, I believe.
I wouldn't know. But when I think of Blink-182,
You think about it.
this is the album, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the one. I mean, I guess someone out there who loves Blink-182 could probably make the argument for Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, but I think Enema is the one. Like,
Yeah.
just so many big songs on there, and like enjoyable all the way through as well. Because like a lot of pop punk, let's be honest, doesn't age great,
No.
and even some of Blink's albums don't age that well.
Yeah.
But I think this is one that like sort of across all generations and like fans of pop punk, they will enjoy.
Okay, so the next one that I'll put in as a little suggestion would be All Killer No Filler by Sum 41. When you've got songs like Fat Lip, Motivation, In Too Deep, that I think, again, very pivotal for the genre, influenced so many of the bands through it. This was them blowing up into the mainstream as well, and it put so much of that to early 2000s pop punk in everyone's faces, and there are songs there that everyone knows the lyrics to. You'll hear some of those choruses hit, and whether they're people that are big pop punk fans or just on the outside and they're fringe there, they will know some of those songs.
All Killer is, yeah, it's a huge album, I think.
It's another one that's hard to say no to, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think you can. I think when you think of pop punk, obviously Green Day and Blink immediately spring to mind, but Sum 41 are not far behind. Like, they are as like iconic as those two bands are.
When you look at those three bands, I feel like Green Day are the ones that kind of sparked the fire, and then Blink and Sum 41 kind of around at relatively the same time, doing slightly different things within the genre. Like Blink 182 were kind of maybe a bit more of the fun pop punky side, the pop side of things, whereas I always feel like Sum 41 have a bit more of a grit to them,
a bit more angst too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that album offers, like, it's a lot of, I remember it was one of the first albums that I remember really, really loving. Like, it's just a really great album.
I really want to add something that kind of kicks off the new wave of pop punk in like the early 2010s, and I'm torn between two albums, so I'm going to need like you guys to help me decide. The Upsides by the Wonder Years or Under Soil and Dirt by The Story So Far, and I'm leaning towards The Story So Far. I think
I would agree.
Under Soil and Dirt is one that I had in the back of my mind as well. Just, what such a phenomenal album.
I feel like it introduces almost a bit more of a hardcore element.
Yeah, and like, that's the thing. So far, I feel like we've definitely focused on like the iconic pioneers, but when you think about like how pop punk has evolved and changed, I don't think there is a more pivotal album than Under Soil and Dirt. Like, for the amount of bands that it inspired and like influenced, I think it's so important.
Well, I feel like off of this album and this era, it kind of sparked like bands like Real Friends.
Yeah.
The Wonder Years that I've just mentioned, and maybe with The Story So Far kind of propelled them into the mainstream a little bit more. 4 Years Strong, perhaps.
Yeah.
There's like an era of bands around the early 2010s that kind of grew around The Story So Far, I think.
Yeah, Knucklepuck as well.
Knucklepuck, yes.
And the reach extends, like, I think the influence that this would have had on bands like Neck Deep, Rome, early Boston Manor. Like, the 2010s era of pop punk doesn't exist without this album, I don't think.
Yeah, so I agree.
I think Under Soil and Dirt is a very strong contender. But I would also throw out Life's Not Out to Get You. I just want to see how you respond to that one.
Stolen my next pick straight away. I think in terms of modern pop punk breaking through into the mainstream, and you kind of like have those two different eras from it, based on the back of this album, Neck Deep, I think helped push forward that new revival so much more into the forefront. So many people became fans of the band and fans of pop punk after hearing this album. I think it was very pivotal in that new generation finding this kind of music, because it had been dormant or not as forward pushing, I think, for so long. And because this was accepted so well into the mainstream, it allowed the pathway for people to find other bands like them and give them more notoriety. So I think it's very important for the new wave, at least.
And finally, the album that killed pop punk, Tickets to My Downfall, Machine Gun Kelly.
Has anyone got any more ideas off the top of that? I got one, but I don't think it's... I'm going to throw it out there, but I feel like it's going to get shot down pretty quickly, and that's Riot by Paramore.
See, it's the weird one, because you see some people class them under the pop punk banner and some people not.
That
album
is. But when people do that,
album.
you kind of think of it I know we're talking about the albums here strictly with that, but not that I'm disagreeing in terms of trying to make a general consensus as much as we can of it. There's a little bit less of an argument for what else it does for the genre.
No, yeah.
No, that's
fair enough. I just wanted to throw it out there.
It's a great album, and there's no
It is.
doubt.
It's phenomenal.
There's no doubt that there's pop punk involvement there.
Yeah.
But is it iconic compared to other stuff that could go in? I'm not so sure.
That's fair enough.
Shall we have a look at some suggestions? See what the
Yes.
people of Reddit are saying.
So I posted in r/poppunkers, try and get the community's response to this question, and people responded, which was very nice. And I
That's
feel
a
like-
relief.
That's a relief. So I'll just sort of chuck out some of the ones that we've not mentioned that the community threw up. And a big one that a lot of people are saying is Sticks and Stones by Newfound Glory, which I think...
I was never too familiar with Newfound Glory.
nor was I.
Neither.
But and also I think that's where
I think
the
they.
US UK
Yeah, exactly.
divide might sort of play in there, because even for like modern pop punk fans, I don't know how big Neck Deep are in America, but here they're the biggest pop punk band in the country.
Yeah.
But I think Newfound Glory is definitely it's definitely an iconic album, but for me it's like it's just a step behind what like Dookie and Enema of the State were doing, and it doesn't have like
Not the same impact
doesn't
it
have
had
the
in the
edge
culture.
to it that All Killer does. So I do think that's a really iconic album, but I don't think for me it doesn't quite hit the top 4. I've seen one here that says From Under the Cork Tree by Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, I overlooked Fall Out Boy a bit. They may be closer to the emo side of things, but still very pop punk.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, but it's sort of where you want to set the boundaries, because I wouldn't include My Chem.
No,
But I've seen there are definitely some people on here suggesting Black Parade,
yeah,
which is an iconic and pioneering album, but
I don't
more
it's quite
more
pop
towards
punk.
emo than pop punk.
Again, it kind of comes under that. Where do you place them?
One that I think, to be honest, maybe it's because we're just not quite the right generation to sort of really fully understand it. But there's a comment here that says one of the 4 should be Milo Goes to College by the Descendants. It was the first thing that shifted punk away from the Ramones. I mean, I can't really speak to like how much I know about that album or about Descendants, but it's definitely a band that you hear about a lot as like a really iconic. But to me, they still exist as punk.
Yeah,
You still
can
find
see,
that fine
I can see
line.
the point this person's making of like, to me they're very much a punk band, but they were starting to take the steps to move toward, not necessarily soften punk or water it down, but to push it in that kind of pop punky, catchy melody kind of direction.
We've got some people saying about Suburbia, I've Given You All, Now I'm Nothing. So
Go the Wonder Years.
quite a lot of people saying Ocean Avenue by Yellowcard. But to be honest, it's not an album I'm that familiar with.
Neither.
Making it a Mount Rushmore thing is you're looking at how much that album influenced as well. Although Yellowcard are a brilliant band, and Ocean Avenue, although I'm not overly familiar with it, is I'm sure a great album. I know a few of the songs from it. Did it arguably have as much influence as some of the others? I don't know. That's open to debate.
Someone here said Rise or Die Trying by 4 Years Strong, which I
was
think
thinking
is for like
4 Years Strong.
when you think
album
about
could be there.
easycore as like a genre. That's the first band that comes to mind for me. I personally prefer Enemy of the World.
I was
And I
about
would
to
argue
say
that-
I don't know if maybe Enemy of the World was more influential
Yeah.
than Rise or
That was
Die
a huge
Trying.
album. I love that album so much.
The other one that I'm not as familiar with discography as much as you two, but A Day to Remember have dabbled in with that, and they've been in
I didn't even think of A Day to Remember.
I didn't even
they've been
think
in
Day to
between
Remember.
obviously different genres where they've had parts of pop punk, they've had parts of metalcore, they've dipped and dabbled in between. But what, in terms of that, for you two out of A Day to Remember kind of discography stands out most as a pop punk kind of big push?
Again, it's almost more directly towards the easycore subgenre. Because like you said, James, there's elements of them that are pop punk, there's elements of them that are slightly more metalcore, which is what kind of makes them this easycore amalgamation, I guess.
Do you have an album by them in particular? I've got one.
It'd have to be Homesick, I think.
See, I was going to go for What Separates Me From You,
Interesting.
which is interesting.
Debate.
I don't know. I think It is a difficult one. Without listening properly, my instinct says that what separates me from you has maybe more like straight up pop punk on it, whereas Homesick is definitely balancing the line between like easy core and hardcore.
When I think of
a bit
Day to
more.
Remember, I immediately think of The Downfall of Us All and like, I'm Made of Wax.
See, my mind goes to like All I Want and that era. So that's
But-
one that I didn't even think of. But that's
you
a really,
you are
really good
you are a
suggestion.
few years younger than me, and those albums would have had a few
Yeah.
years between them.
Yeah, that's-
So maybe that's an era thing again as well.
A lot of people saying "Bleed American" by Jimmy Eat World.
It's a great shout.
That is a very good shout. I don't know if
Again, in terms of influence on
if we're talking
on
top
other
10,
bands.
if we're talking top 10, it's there.
Oh yeah,
But as far as like Mount Rushmore goes,
Just throwing bands out as well. Where did Bowling for Soup fit with this, do you think? Because they get lumped in with it a lot. Not necessarily saying they are, but I've seen a lot of their music sometimes get lumped in with it all.
I think when you look at pop punk as well, you've got the bands we just mentioned, like Blink, having their like heyday and their big era being late 90s, early noughties. It's then going to spawn a bunch of bands, which it did. People that grew up listening to Blink-182 started making bands sort of 2009, 2010 time. That's kind of where that new wave came from. Bands like Bowling for Soup kind of fall in that middle ground of like 2004, 2006, where kind of pop punk was still popular, but it wasn't.
it's a bit
like,
stagnant.
Yeah, it was just doing its thing, trundling along kind of thing.
Shall I read out the top voted reply on Reddit
Go
What,
for
for
it.
their Mount Rushmore?
for someone's Mount Rushmore? Dookie and Enema of the State, Sticks and Stones by Newfound Glory, and Through Being Cool by Saves the Day. Which I think
I can't say I've listened to much Saves
that's
today.
where I think a big like US UK like divide comes in, because I don't think that's a band that ever really
Didn't break here.
like when I think of pop punk I think about like videos that I saw on like Kerrang growing up, and Save the Day was never really a band that like I was aware of until I was like much older. Someone else, Dookie, Enemy of the State, Sticks and Stones, All Killer No Filler.
Well, I feel like from what we've seen on Reddit and what we've said ourselves, Dookie and Enema of the State are kind of locked in there.
I think they're locked in. I think All Killer No Filler is locked in. A lot of people have put that up there.
I think those three, I think we can unanimously agree on, in terms of All Killer No Filler by Sum 41, Dookie by Green Day, and Enema of the State as Blink-182 as must-haves on that Mount Rushmore. We now will get into the debate then, what is the fourth one? So if we go around personally, Alex, what would you choose?
We've covered like the early days and like the front runners of this genre, like the true pioneers, but you can't think about pop punk without modern era. So
Mhm.
for me, my fourth pick goes to Under Soul and Dirt by Story So Far. Or I would happily have someone argue an album of that era, like maybe Wonder Years or Life's Not Out to Get You. But for me, I would go with Under Soul and Dirt.
Dan.
You see, like Alex just said, we could argue between like, and I mean, when I suggested Under Soul and Dirt, I also thought, well, you could also go for The Upsides or Suburbia by the Wonder Years. But I feel like Under Soul and Dirt just did something so kind of new, with like that kind of grittier, more aggressive. Like you think of pop punk bands now, and when you go and see a pop punk band, you're angry finger pointing at the front, you're crowd surfing, you might even be two-stepping in the pit. That all stems from what the Story So Far did on that album. So I think my vote is going to that.
I've been outvoted already, so whatever my pick is null and void.
You
I would personally go for Life's Not Out to Get You. I think from what I've seen and from a first-hand perspective of being able to almost convert people towards pop punk, and what I can show them as a modern day kind of example of it. Without Life's Not Out to Get You, I wouldn't be able to get so many people into the genre that otherwise wouldn't be listening to this kind of music. And I'd have some nostalgia for some of these bands like a Green Day, like a Blink-182, like a Sum 41. But in terms of the modern day and immediately in friends that we go to festivals with who would love to see Neck Deep live, that album I think is so pivotal in that as well, that it's up there for the discussion as part of that, because of what it's done in the mainstream now, what it's done as part of this revival in modern day, and how big they've become for the genre, and how big they're becoming more overseas now as well. as part of this almost more current wave of pop punk.
See, I don't necessarily disagree with you. It's certainly an influential album, but I don't think Nice Now to Get You would be the album it was without Under Soil and Dirt being there that few years before. This is a very polite debate.
It is.
Because I think as well, like if one of us was like way more familiar with like Fall Out Boy's catalogue or Newfound Glory's catalogue, then
That argument's
we'd
there.
probably be arguing for those bands. But I've pretty much gone through as much of this subreddit as possible, and the next most named band is Newfound Glory. But I just think
I
the
think
era that
I
they
think
were
that
in,
era
they
is
weren't
covered
doing,
by
they weren't
what was
doing as
already
much
there.
as yeah.
There needs to be something that's more current, something that is
'Cause-
more relatable to the second wave that we've had of pop punk come through.
Because the genre got stale. Like pre-Soil and Dirt was like
It was quiet
a
for
bleak
years.
time. Like,
Yeah.
and that definitely brought in like a newfound like sort of hardcore influence. And
So,
are we settled?
All Killer No Filler by Sum 41
Dookie by Green Day.
Under Soil and Dirt by the story so far.
and Enema of the State by Blink-182.
That's it.
Lock it in.
Lock it in. If
That
you
is-
disagree, tough, because we're the foremost authority on this now, and we have.
But
decided
we will
that's what
hear
it
you
is.
out in the comments.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let us know down below what your Mount Rushmore. Yeah, that. What your Mount Rushmore of pop punk albums would be. And if you want to hear more of our opinions on Mount Rushmore artists or bands, let us know what you want to hear.
Yeah, this was fun. I like this. Should we recommend
Yes.
some albums and then we can all go?
Oh, of course. I forgot about that bit.
James, what would you like to recommend?
I'm going to recommend a 2019 EP from Alpha Wolf titled Fault. I've recently become a big fan of them after their kind of collaboration with Holding Absence. You guys have been more aware of them, and to go back and listen back to a nice digestible EP. There's even an interlude song on there for Alex, which I'm sure he'll love.
Interlude song on an EP. That's crazy.
Exactly. Lovely 44 seconds. Yeah, go listen to that.
I would like to recommend Happiness by Beauty School. It came out sort of towards the end of the summer, start of the autumn, and I think it's perfect for this time of year.
And I'm going to recommend Free by 100th. We got a taste of the new 100th from this month's recommendation, so let's kick it back. Go old school and see which version of 100th you guys prefer. I think I already fucking know, let's be honest. But
200ths.
200ths, we're going for 200ths with Free.
So if you enjoyed this podcast, like the video, give us 5-star reviews on whatever platform you're listening to, and yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got plenty of content on there. We've got tier lists, we've got vlogs, we've got reviews, we've got reactions. There's all kinds of things on there with alternative metal music. We love hearing from you, so make sure comment, engage on our social media posts at RAGAMUFFIN666 on all the platforms, and yeah, stay up to date with what we've got going on.
If you want to hear our three voices with an extra fourth one thrown in, we have an interview series called A Perfect Gig. Each episode we have a guest on and they pick their dream 4-band lineup. And that's just a great barrel of laughs.
Oh, it certainly is. We also do Ragamuffin Radio, which individually, the three of us get to pick some songs that we've been listening to recently, so you get to hear what we like and what we've been up to.
And to celebrate this Halloween season, we have a video on our channel exploring the relationship between horror, Halloween and heavy metal. You can go give that a watch right now, literally right now, because this is about to be over, so you can go and watch it now.
Once again, socials at RAGAMUFFIN666, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, everywhere.
That's it.
Bye.
That's the podcast.
Comment your Mount Rushmore of pop punk albums and that.
Bye.
Bye.